Belt and Road Initiative, something
Yeah, Belt and
in
Road.
China. Yeah, and so often when people say, well, what's America doing? They say, well, if we develop space, it'll be our Platinum Highway where we can mine and do all these things in space and we can explore that way while China kind of starts mopping up with these third and second world countries.
Yeah, we'll see. I think combined, the Western world certainly has an enormous capability to do these things, fund these missions. What I'm very interested in is what ends up being internationally, like who owns an orbital, band around the Earth, right? So like Starlink has gone up into a certain orbital band right around the planet. I think I read something that said of something like 14,000 available spots that you think you can safely put satellites in without crashing into each other. SpaceX is planning to take 11,000 of those, which means no one else can realistically have a satellite swarm in that band anymore. So you have to go higher, which is harder and more expensive and yada, yada. So, or the moon, right? Like if you land on the moon and you put a flag on it, do you get to say you own it? Because there's no law, there's no internationally recognized anything that says you can't. Or what if there's only water on the north and south poles of the moon, and one country puts bases on both and declares an exclusion zone around that base that's the size of the poles and says that all this water is ours. Our exclusion zone extends beyond all the water is ours. If you come near us, we'll shoot you. What do you do about that? There's no precedent, there's no law for it, right? The closest thing you would have is the laws that kind of govern the way Antarctica is governed. But
Is
even
China
then,
part of that?
I don't know, but it is international. Yeah. It is at least an international. It's internationally.
Yeah. No, I understand your point. I was just curious if there was one example of China playing nice with other people. It's like, oh, if they're part of Antarctica, maybe that could be the template for space. But it seems like it's everyone but China that gets along when it comes to space stuff.
Well, I mean, plenty of countries have disagreements. I think the Chinese are just looking at what the Western world did, and they're looking to say, well, we want to do that as well. Like, why do all of you get to play geopolitics and then say I can't do what I want, right? That's like America did something not dissimilar to what China's doing in the South China Sea in the Gulf in terms of like its rights and the zones and all this sort of, and no one did anything because they were America. Everyone you could go and argue against was an allied nation to it. So what are you going to do? But so I think the Chinese are just trying to, they're a bit late to the game on imperialism. And I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying imperialism is good. But I'm just there. I think they're just looking at it saying, why don't we get to do what we want? You all got to do what you want. Why can't I do that as well? Right?
Yeah. Is imperialism still a thing? I thought imperialism went away.
I think it's now like
yeah. I wouldn't think like what the America does now is imperialism.
I've heard some people call it neo-imperialism.
That is a fun word. But
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I'm just saying that I think that, like many,
I see your point.
Like global warming, right? Like burning coal or mining the ground, right? It sort of feels like the Western world has been having an enormous party for about the last 200 years, but now the beer is running out. And so when other people show up with their beer, the Western world is like, whoa, you have to ration your beer, man. We're running out. We'll take a few of those. You can't drink them too quickly, and it's like, well, we've been kind of having our party for the longest time, and now things are kind of getting sketchy, but other people only just getting started. Who are we to tell them that they can't have a rager?
Yeah, well, wasn't the NASA structure of as long as you're not military, you can plug into the system the way of including them into the rager versus saying limiting them? The limiting factor is when they tried doing the military civilians, as you were saying. So it does seem like there was a structure for them to plug into the system and take advantage of the West having erased it for 200 years and having the experience of it. They were kind of allowed to come in, and there was a guy named Chugs, and he was like, "Hey, this is how you do beer pong and stuff." They were willing to show him everything, but they were like, "You got to put your guns at the door. You can't come in here," and they weren't willing to do that. And that
Yeah, I
seems to
mean,
be
right, right. We said
yeah,
you have to come play, but you have to play on our terms. And they said, we don't want to play on your terms. So we said, okay, you
yeah.
can't play. So they said, fine, we'll play on our own. I mean,
Hmm.
that was basically
It seems
it,
kind of
right?
yeah, it seems kind of weird. Like if I was China, I would go in, take everything I could. If the objective ultimately was to do your own thing, take all the knowledge, then build my own structure, and then switch it slowly over time as I slowly accrue everything. And then like it's kind of like a boa constrictor, just slowly suffocates you and takes away your breath to the point where you don't really notice it, and then you pass out.
Well, I mean, they seem to gain the knowledge they needed in a relatively, in 20 years ish, they went from having no real serious space program to being very capable of launching rockets into orbit. And now, I mean, there's a space station right now, as I understand it, that's orbiting the planet. So, I mean, you're not wrong, but hey, I mean, they did it either way, right or wrong. They are very capable now.
Yeah. Yeah,
they are the reason that the US declared the fourth domain of war, open for business again, right?
Yeah.
Because they said they were going to the moon, and America was very worried. Western world was very worried about what that meant in terms of, they did not want the Chinese showing up, putting down a flag, and saying this is ours now.
Yeah, and it seems like that would be something they would do. I just think if they treated it more like a relay race where they could come and grab the baton and keep going forward, I just wonder where the world would be with that type of progression. But at the same time, it does seem like the military jumping into things allowed the structure of SpaceX to exist and all these other companies that will potentially move things forward faster. The downside is like maybe it ends up killing lots of people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not here to.
Yeah.
I don't want to get sucked into the debate of whether China's doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or Western world the right thing or the wrong thing, or that's all just a mess. So, but yeah, maybe I take the view that we'll probably do more together than we ever will alone. Although the flip side of that argument is, though, ironically, right, when we were doing everything together, we did almost nothing. We had the ISS. It was useful. We learned things. I'm not trying to poo-poo it, or I'm not trying to say it's bad, but it certainly doesn't scream with the naked ambition of the moon missions, does it?
Yeah.
And so we could have gone back. We could have had moon bases by now. We could have done all this stuff, and we didn't do it because we were all going together. It wasn't, in fact, until one person said, "Sort of, then I'll do my own thing," that suddenly off we all went. So. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an arms race, right? It's a new arms race. Hypersonics and space flight, among other topics, are an arms race that the Western world is currently in with China and Russia. There's no two ways.